when you're a child and then you're at the school ground, everybody's playing in the field. And all of a sudden, it rained. What would happen? They ran. And all my peers and the classmates, they just ran to the classroom. So I ran and ran. But by the time I get to the classroom or the building, I was the only one who was soaked wet. I was not able to run fast enough and then did not get to the building. And then when I saw myself and then understood the difference between them and me, they can run, I cannot run. I cannot go fast. This difference, nobody can deny. And I knew. This is when my self-worth was almost to the bottom.
In 1952, polio was one of the most dreaded diseases in the world. It had crippled and killed thousands from wealthy countries, like the United States, to war-torn Japan. The great race was on in the scientific community to find a cure. But it would not be until the 1960s that the polio vaccine was perfected for widespread use. For Yoshinobu Namihira and thousands of others, however, the vaccine was too late. Born on distant Yonaguni Island in Japan, there was no nearby hospital for his mother, Shizu Yonaha, to go to.
Only thing she knew was massage the arm, massage the legs, massage the back, with the hope that someday he will walk. And that's all she did. Miraculously, as the time went by, soon I started learning how to crawl, and then soon holding the canes and bamboos, and then learn how to walk. And from that point, and then started using the crutches. So it itself is a miracle. The reason why I was so impressed, my mother thought this boy is not going to make it. And then in 1952, the world economy was very bad, and then it was after the war. Nobody had the money. So they don't care whether you die or live, because everybody tried to survive. In that circumstance, my mother thought, oh, this boy is not going to make it.
Shizu Yonaha had seen hard times before. Her second child had suffered malnutrition, and the first child had died from it during the war. Now, Yoshinobu, her fourth child, was deathly ill with polio. But it was about to get even worse. Her husband left her and never came back.
My father, when we were very small, deserted us. And in Japanese culture, when you have no father, it's a disgrace because you're outcast of the society. And it's very hard to survive. So my mother, in that context, she said, well, I don't have a husband, I don't have money, I don't have a job, and then you have 3 children with a hungry mouth. So she said, well, the easiest thing is all of us go to the beach, not for the swim, but for the suicide. So she was taking the children, both hands and child with on the back, and going through the East Sea Ocean. And while she was walking to commit the suicide as a family, she saw something very interesting. She was walking and then watching the children's eye, but the children has no idea of what she was thinking of. So when she realized that her children has no idea, so she felt it's not fair. So she turned around, instead of going all the way to the ocean for the mass suicide, she turned around, go back to the parent, to make a deal.
With no husband and a family to feed, Shizu Yunaha knew she would have to have a reliable job to be able to provide for their needs. In order to get a job, she would have to go back to school. She asked her parents if they would be willing to take care of her 3 children and help send her to school. They agreed. There was only one question.
This is one of the very hard decisions for my mother. I said, question is, what would happen to the boy while you're gone? If something happened and if this boy died, is it my fault or is it your fault? And the deal is this. If I'm here, if the boy is going to live, this boy is going to live. If I'm not here, if this boy is going to die, is going to die. Point is, whether I die or live, it's not your problem.
This difficult decision would help save her family and provide a strong influence in her children's future professional careers. With a heavy heart, Shizu Yunaha left immediately for Okinawa to study nursing. She knew that her 2 children would be safe with her parents, but what about her youngest? Would he make it?
Back in the old days, people do not send you email. Telegram means death. Who's going to just call and say hello and send you a telegram? It's too expensive. Telegram means death. So one thing that she was afraid of from homeland was a telegram. So the 1 month and 2nd month, and as the time went by, no telegram. She finally graduated from the nursing school, and then she left Okinawa Island, go back to Ishigaki Island, and go back to Yonaguni Island, and found all 3 children alive. Now she had a skill, now she had a job, now she has a trade in her hand, the profession, and she was able to take the children back from the grandparents, and then all 4 of us became the family.
Life was still a struggle. The nearest doctor was a long boat trip away in Okinawa, and so Shizu Yunaha became the main healthcare provider for the entire island of almost 2,000 people. She had missed her family while she was studying in Okinawa, but her new profession would demand her time and dedication as well.
So she went to door to door by bicycle, island, then take care of them, give her each instruction, and she had all this, like a doctor has a chart, each house. And she comes home like 9 o'clock at night, and when she comes home, kids are, time to time, they slept without eating. And they are poor to start, out, and it was very hard life. And he just cry and on a dusty road and tired and sleeps there. So neighbor will catch him and put him in his house. That was his life, see.
As the sole health provider for the entire island, she was working from day until the evening, every day, for the people of the island. And as a child, only thing I remember is watching your mother from the back, but working day and night, not for her own self, but for the betterment of the neighbors and for your patients and then for the people.
As the sole public health provider on Yonaguni, she was instrumental in eradicating tuberculosis, leprosy, and malaria from the island during her 30-plus years of service. Treating tuberculosis was very difficult. Whenever she approached the door of a suspected TB patient, the family would not let her enter. In those days, if a person was diagnosed with tuberculosis, the word would quickly spread throughout the whole island and the community would ostracize the family. During nursing school, her instructors had emphasized to her that if she was serious about helping others, no problem she would face would be insurmountable. She could find a solution. Shizu Yunaha made a plan. Instead of visiting suspected tuberculosis patients during normal business hours, she visited in the evening and didn't wear her nurse's uniform. To any neighbor, it would just appear that she was making a friendly visit. And it worked. Families with sick TB patients would let her inside, and she could then treat them and keep their illness a secret. Her tireless dedication to Yonaguni Island did not go unnoticed. Many years later, she received awards by the government and other organizations in recognition of her years of service for the good of her community.
My mother never told us, okay, you have to do the homework and you have to study and you become a professional. She never gave us the, do this, do that. All we saw was mother's figure from behind. But what kind of impression did it make for me? It was the dedication, life of service, life of dedication. But at the same time, do it with all your heart. And then when I watched from behind, that made a strong impression. It is my grandparents' philosophy that is in one word: education, 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 even if you have to borrow money. That principle was ingrained and translated into my mother, and that also I passed on to us.
Seeing her children receive an education was one of Shizu Yonaha's biggest dreams, and so, when he was old enough, Yoshinobu was enrolled in the public school on the island.
I went the regular public school. There was no special school for the handicapped children at that time because the country was very poor. And one of the instances that I can relate to you, because I walk with limp, and then I go to the bathroom and then try to urinate. Because for me, balance is the most important. If I lose balance, I fall very quickly. Because I knew it. So while you're standing and very carefully maintaining a balance and then take care of the personal need at the bathroom, and then this is one of the students who will come behind you in secret and then just push your knees forward, and what will happen? I lose my balance and then fall. And then what happened was they will laugh at you and then they ran. They ran. I remember, and then when they get close and then they forget that I was thinking, and then I grabbed their belt. I never grabbed their pants, because what would happen? They can run away. And once they become exhausted, this is my time. I bring it, my fellow students toward me, and then I punch them.
Being accepted by your peers is one of the most important things for a child in elementary school, and Yoshinobu had the odds stacked against him. Anything he achieved came through much effort, sweat, and often tears. On one occasion during elementary school, there was an athletic competition day, and all students were required to participate. Yoshinobu was to race against some of his classmates. In pity, the teachers put him a few feet in front of the other students, and then blew the whistle to begin the race. Yoshinobu tried to run, but realized he wasn't going to be fast enough on his feet. So he ran the rest of the race in a handstand and finished in third place.
My mother thought I would never get any prize, and teacher didn't think that I was going to do good enough. But when I got the third prize, so they put the first person on the first place and second, and then I was standing on the third place, and the teacher gave me a prize. It was a pencil, but to me, even the pencil, it was priceless, because it was the gift. It was a gift. And then when my mother was watching this scene from the audience, and she ran from the audience and said, "My boy got the prize. My boy got the prize." And it was for her. It's a big surprise. Nobody thought this polio boy is going to get the prize, but I was given the pencil.
One of Yoshinobu's life-defining experiences occurred when he was 13 years old. A circuit of doctors from mainland Okinawa, traveling to the rustic islands to provide health care, stopped on Yonaguni. They made it known that they wanted to examine all handicapped children on the island. When Shizu Yunaha heard this, she brought her son to them. The doctors noticed that his right leg was completely inverted due to the polio, and they told her that they could correct that with surgery. Arrangements were soon made to admit Yoshinobu to the hospital for the handicapped children in Okinawa.
When you're in a small island, and then you are working with the peers and then your fellow students, and everybody can run and you cannot run, and then nobody thinks you're good either. Nobody thinks you're smart. And then at that point, my self-worth was going down, 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 down. And then I thought I was no good. When I went from Yonaguni Island to the mainland Okinawa to be admitted for the hospital for Okinawa Hospital for Handicapped Children, this is when my life changed. When I saw the children with the cerebral palsy cannot walk, cannot talk, and then when I saw the children walking on the hallway with hanging on the rail, and those children with completely wheelchair bound, and also the children that are walking with the brace with a lot of noises, I would never imagine that this is a reality. I thought I was the worst case of the poliomyelitis in the entire world because I was born and I've never left a small island. So I thought I was the worst. All of a sudden, when I saw the other side of the world, not only I was ashamed, thinking that I was the worst case of the poliomyelitis, and then number two, I was very much humbled by the scene. The very night, the first night, I went back to my bed and I wept. And this is when I made one commitment. If I ever become a doctor, I want to be the doctor and I want to help. Yeah. And then this is the first time that there is a desire that I want to do something for somebody.
That desire only intensified throughout the next few months of Yoshinobu's stay in the children's hospital. Days in bed were spent thinking of what parts of his body were still usable and how to put them to the best use. He now realized that he had so much more than others. He remembered a story his teacher had read to the class in 6th grade about a girl named Anne Frank who lived in hiding because she was a Jew. It had made him cry. Here was a girl shut up in hiding, not knowing if her life would end the next day, but yet she lived with earnestness and perseverance, studying hard in a dark hiding place. Yoshinobu realized that he didn't have to hide. He could go outside, play, even sing at the top of his lungs. What was preventing him from developing his mind and putting it to work? Looking back, he knew he had been a poor student and often got in fights with his classmates. But from that point on, he decided that things would be different. As time progressed, Yoshinobu's school grades began to climb higher, from near the bottom of the class until he was finally an A student. He was on the right track. He could be a doctor after all. Soon, he was a senior in high school preparing for the college entrance examination.
1 month before the examination, I became ill. So I was admitted to the hospital and then stayed in the hospital. And everybody else is working, studying hard for the college entrance examination. And then I knew I have to study. So I did my best, and then I asked a surgeon, can you just give me a special permit for me to go and take a test? So I went ahead and take a test, and after the examination, I went back to the hospital for the second surgery to drain the abscess. So this surgery was done, And then examination result came. In Japan, at that time, instead of posting all the result on the board, they will give you the result by radio, by transistor radio. And so I knew that day of announcement, so I was listening to that transistor radio, thinking that my name will show up, and then go through in sequence, and all of a sudden, my name was not on it. And I thought it must be a mistake. And then, at the end of the announcement, it said, "This is the end of all the announcement for those who passed the college entrance examination." And I knew I failed, and that was very heartbreaking. If you're in Japan and in a small society, and Japan is a very closed society and a highly competitive society, and if you fail, you are no longer cream of the crop. you're outside of the society. And then if you're handicapped, that's not good either. So I feel like the entire world was against me. So when I learned that I failed a college entrance examination, and I was no good, I was not smart, I was not the most beautiful, I was not the strongest, and I was very depressed. So I quietly left the hospital room, went to the backyard of the hospital, and then I was looking at the moon and said, "I failed college entrance examination. I'm no good, I'm not smart, and then I won't commit to suicide." Because at that point, you have no hope. So I became very depressed. And then the thought of suicide came into my mind. I said, "That's right, it's easier for me to commit suicide and then finish up." But while I was watching the moon from the backyard of the hospital, something hit me. It was my mother's picture. Here's a mother who is working hard every day, the very best that she can do. And here's a young boy and says, "I'm going to commit suicide." To me, it's not fair. I said, "I will do this. I will postpone, put off one more year, and then I'm going to study as hard as I can under the given circumstance, and then we'll make another choice." So when I was discharged from the hospital, went back home, and then I stayed at home. I studied from 5 o'clock in the morning until midnight, every day. Didn't go anywhere, every day. Yeah, I made up my mind. I said, "I'm going to do it." And then after 1 year of hard studies and very intense, very determined effort, and then I applied for the college entrance examination for the second time. And then at the second trial, I passed.
Yoshinobu decided to study English at the University of Ryukyu because it was his favorite subject in high school, and he had decided medicine was beyond his ability after failing the college entrance examination the first time. College was less stressful than the past year of studying for the exam, so Yoshinobu spent more time making friends.
So I became acquainted with one female student who was a music major, and then I felt, well, if you like the music and you must have a good heart. So I said, okay. So I made a friend with this particular individual, and we became very close friends. And the interesting thing is she had a brother who had handicap. So I became very familiar with their families. So in my mind, it was selfish motivation. I thought, okay, so this is a lady who is going to stay with me and then for the rest of my life. And so I was very simple-minded. After 6 months of a courtship, all of a sudden, I noticed something different. She had a group of friends coming on the road, and I was walking, and she was very, very ashamed of introducing me as a boyfriend. So I felt something is not right. I thought she was my girlfriend, and then she didn't she did not act right in public. So I said, that sounds funny for me. So after this event took place, I asked her a very important question and said, what was the rationale behind that you were acting very funny? So she was very, very reluctant to talk about this event. I was very persistent, so I keep asking and say, so what was the reason that, see, because I was walking and you're walking and your group of friends came, and then finally, because of my persistent, repeated question, she finally told her thought and said, the reason why I did not introduce you as my boyfriend is because you have a polio. To me, it was like a earth-shaking. You feel like at the bottom of the floor is just dropped, and you're going down, you're going sinking down. I knew better than anybody else that I had a victim of the polio. I mean, you don't have to tell me that I walk funny. I knew. But when someone tells you that you're no good because of the polio, what does it do to me? It's not good. It's not good. All of a sudden, my high hope went into the brokenheartedness.
Already struggling with his self-worth because of his handicap and the recent failure at his first attempt at the college entrance exam, Yoshinobu became very depressed. He was wary of people's help, fearing that sooner or later they would betray him.
And one day, I was coming down from the school, and then it was 1972. There was a poster on a telephone pole, and then this, do you know what it says? This poster, it said, human limitations, date, time, and place, and all the detail. And I said, just a moment. Limitations, first of all, the limitations caught my attention. And the human, that's right, we are human beings. And limitations. And then all of a sudden, I said, you're right. Everybody has the limitations. I do have limitations. I have a physical limitation, poliomyelitis. I have intellectual limitation because I did not pass the college entrance examination for the first time. And then third, spiritual limitation because I cannot trust you because of the distrust, because of the brokenheartedness, distrust. When I knew that I was surrounded by the three human limitations, the word limitation really caught my attention. And I said, all right, I want to go for the first meeting.
So Yoshinobu took the bus to the first meeting. After the meeting was over, he turned in a sheet of paper he had been given with a question for the speaker. The Bible says that God is love. Does God really love me, in spite of my permanent physical handicap, without discrimination? Because Yoshinobu wanted to know what the speaker would say, he came back the next day for the second meeting. Just before the speaker began his scheduled lecture, he took a few minutes to explain to the audience the very question Yoshinobu had turned in the previous night. He explained it like this. God's love is extended to anyone without any trace or hint of discrimination, irrespective of physical handicap. Human sufferings, trials, afflictions, and physical handicaps in life have a purpose. That is to reveal the glory of God, the works of God, through these experiences in life.
And then I was beginning to, my heart was softening as the days went by. And then I was listening and saying, that's right. If this God's love is true, if this is true, I want to believe it. And then when I beginning to see this concept, God's love which doesn't change, but the human love which is easy to change, is subject to the change. When I see this contrast, I say, wow, God's love is eternal, is changeless. But human love is very fragile. One day it's good, the next day it's not good. It's fragile. When I saw this contrast between the two, I said, I want this one. I want something firm, something very solid. And that's when I made a decision to be baptized.
After the evangelistic meetings, Yoshinobu studied the Bible weekly with the Okinawa SDA mission president for a year and was baptized in December of 1973. Soon after this, he passed the exchange student examination and won a scholarship to study English for 1 year at Ambassador College in Pasadena, California. His new Adventist friends in Okinawa contacted the Japanese Adventists they knew in Los Angeles to tell them that Yoshinobu was coming and to help him with the transition of living in America. Yoshinori, Yoshinobu's older brother, traveled by train to visit him in the airport as he was leaving for America. Yoshinori had been a father figure to Yoshinobu, and the wisdom he shared that day left a strong impression in Yoshinobu's life.
My brother explained to me, he said, if you want to put this amount of effort, and you get this amount of result. If you put this amount of effort, and you get this amount of result and accomplishment and result. And the concept is very, very profound. But if you don't put the effort, you shouldn't expect the result. I knew this principle very well. Therefore, ever since I left the Haneda Airport in 1972, I followed the principle. Everything I do, if I want to do it, I want to do it well, and do it for other people.
Los Angeles was very different than Yonaguni or Okinawa. There were too many cars and too many people, and even though Yoshinobu had studied English for 2 years in college, he could hardly understand what people were saying. Not only was the accent different, but he didn't understand the idioms. Yoshinobu rose to the challenge, and his English rapidly improved. Because he didn't have his own car, he relied on his new Japanese Adventist friends to take him to the Japanese Seventh-day Adventist Church in Los Angeles.
One of the lay activity leader, Dr. Polio, approached me and said, by the way, are you willing to give a 10 minutes testimony? He said, 10 minutes. And not knowing what I'm getting into, I said, I will.
Unknown to Yoshinobu that day, there was someone in the audience that was deeply touched by his story.
When I heard his testimony was so strong to me. So I had an impression he will not forsake God.
So I gave my testimony, and then I left and went back, not knowing what I did and what was the impact.
I was very touched of that pain he went through, and I said to myself, well, I can help him, and on top of it, he loves God. That's what I wanted. That's the one thing I wanted. And I started to pray about it, and at that time, this lady, our very close friend, she said, she really cared about me too, so she said, well, I have somebody for you, you know, and he's very rich. I said, is he Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist? She said, no, his parents are. Oh, I don't want somebody who, you know, is not for the Lord yet, because I wanted somebody in it already, otherwise I don't have a confidence to convert them, or he might convert me back to somewhere else. So, okay, do you have somebody in your head, or you have idea? I said, yeah, you know, this person who gave a testimony, I thought that was good. But she said, I cannot introduce him to you because he has a handicap, and I wonder what your parents would think. You know, you may have to go through some difficulty. I don't want to, and that was it.
But that wasn't it. One day, the same friend that refused to introduce Mieko to Yoshinobu was asked to give Yoshinobu and another gentleman a righted church. She'd been trying to help this man find a wife for some time, and after talking to him, she turned to Yoshinobu and said that she would try to help him find a wife too.
He said, no, I'm not marrying. You're not marrying? Why? And he said, well, nobody wants to marry, a handicap. What? Wow, somebody was impressed by you, she said. So, who?
But they don't tell you who is it. And I said, oh, really? I said, are you sure?
Who is that? Is that long hair or this talking? Oh, I can't talk. It was in a church. I heard your testimony. That's all he got the information. But I guess that was enough.
So, if you are a cripple, you don't have no money, you have no degrees, you have nobody, and so who do you think you will be interested in? I said, no. I said, no. Somebody is interested in. Oh, are you sure? So I said, I was very curious because I'm very determined. I said, I'm curious. So who is it? And said, but they will never tell you who and where and how it happened.
And after that, we had a camp meeting. And in camp meeting, we happened to sit together. He was here, I was here, and there was another lady on the other side of my husband. They went to same school, different times. She was a little bit older. So they were really talking happily. And
the pen fell out of my pocket to the ground. And I said, all right. And just before I was going to reach the pen, there was a lady sitting in the chair. And she went forward to the ground, picked up the pen, and gave it to me. She said, I thank you. So I sat beside the chair, and we exchanged a conversation.
And he turned, which church are you from? So I told him, oh, he said, did you hear my testimony? He asked me. So I did. And were you impressed? Yeah, I was. Oh, okay, he said. Then he went home.
I was thanking for her a nice act of kindness. But next breath, I asked the most stupid question. Do you know what was the most stupid question? By the way, he said, were you at the Los Angeles Japanese church? And I said, yes. And said, I gave this testimony, and then I asked most stupid question, were you impressed? And she said, yes. That's all I asked. From that point, I said, yeah, this is the lady that this must be the one. So after 1 week later, I proposed.
I really forgot how many days, but I really believe it was within a week, I guess, a few days. Then he wrote me a letter. Well, he wants to marry me, I guess. So I said, that's fine. I know him. He will not throw God out. That's how it started.
When I went through the experience of brokenheartedness and then going through the evangelistic meeting of human limitations, when I went through that series of meetings, I knew something, I learned something very profound. That is, there's a dichotomy between the human love and God's love. When I knew this difference between the two, then I was able to trust instead of distrust. So that was a transition. And then when I met Mieko, I was on this mode, in a trusting mode instead of the distrusting mode. Yeah.
The way we were brought up, both of us are very poor, but so different background, See, they were not Christians, and their value was a little different. He had to make it, because he has a handicap. You have to make it, His mother would say, I may die. He's going to take care of you. You have to make it. Then he had to do everything to make it. He was so focused to make it, And I didn't know what does it mean.
But she would soon discover. On June 22nd, 1975, after about a year of courtship, Yoshinobu and Mieko were married. Yoshinobu's brother, Yoshinori and their mother came all the way from Japan for this special occasion. Yoshinori was so impressed by his brother's Adventist lifestyle, family and friends, that he soon became an Adventist after returning to Japan. Yoshinobu's drive to make it would only intensify after a doctor friend encouraged him in his childhood dream of studying medicine.
And this doctor encouraged him to take medicine. And that was his original desire was. And he said, that's what I'll do. So their group, Okinawa group, they raised some money, and I worked too. And he went to La Sierra.
So I moved from Ambassador College to La Sierra College. Then I have to finish something. And then I learned something very interesting. For mathematics, you take classes, but you don't have to take labs.
Without having to take as many labs, Yoshinobu was able to take more classes which would help him graduate faster. Mathematics wasn't easy, and he would often phone his professors at home to ask them for help with difficult problems. He put everything he had into his studies, and finally, the day came for the final exam for his last class.
I was working on my mathematics, and then I was working on the exam paper. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and work on question number 1, question number 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, question go down. And then I was working, and teacher said, well, time for you to turn in the paper. And then other students stand up and give the paper. And I was working really hard, and I was trying to answer all the questions. And Dr. Bornhouse said, my final announcement, time to turn in. And then said, if you do not turn in, and if I walk out of this room, and you get the 0. Just before he walked out, I stood up and then ran to the door and give him the paper, and it fell. I failed. And then I got the A on mathematics, and I graduated from the La Sierra College with a high degree.
He focused it, can't say anything else. He will get it, Strives. I said, if I studied that hard, I could do better too.
So to me, it's a blessing, because I cannot do what I do without her help. That's number 1. Number 2, she always supports me what I do.
That support was vital after Yoshinobu graduated from La Sierra College and was accepted to the Loma Linda School of Medicine.
He was really doing well, all straight A in college, but medical school, everybody is so smart and go fast.
Once I get into medical school, everybody's smart, and all your classmates is very smart. So you're competing with the smart people already, and then you have to survive.
So he had a hard time. You know the amount he has to do. And what I could see, his face was just distressed, so distressed.
And you take the test, and you're almost at the borderline. And you take another test, you're borderline. You're almost thinking, pass or fail, pass or fail, pass or fail. So you're always nervous.
So I just wanted to lighten up. So I thought about this, writing something.
As I went school and lectures and labs, and then we have to eat the lunch. So I carried my lunch, and inside the lunch, she put a poem. And then she it's a handwritten poem, and then she put a poem in the lunch. So as I ate lunch, and then I read the poem, and then she also put Ellen G. White quotes as encouragement. So these are the things that really helped me when you're at the bottom. If you're at the top of the class and everybody thinks you're smart, you don't need help. But you're at the very bottom, nobody thinks you're smart. And still, your spouse and your wife give you the encouragement and say, yeah, keep up, keep up, keep up, keep up, and give her quotes and then, for the encouragement. To me, it was a spiritual backbone.
That spiritual backbone was very important for Yoshinobu. Being newlyweds while studying medicine was not for the faint of heart. There were many challenges, especially considering their different upbringings, but Mieko's sacrifices helped pave the way for Yoshinobu to succeed.
Sometimes I was so stressed out too, unhappy, unhappy, and I didn't want to write. But sometimes I said, he needs it, I'm going to write it.
During the time Yoshinobu was studying medicine, there was a shortage of doctors in the United States, and medical schools changed their schedules so that students could graduate in 3 years instead of 4. This only added to the stress.
But I was always asking God, God, I did not ask anything, money, doctors, or what. Only thing I asked you, happy marriage. That's the one thing you didn't give me. Why is it? That was my, all this. But the way we ended up, I understood, and at the same time, God helped me to grow too. That was important to me at this time. That's what it does, when two different people get together, completely different, cannot understand what's going on. Why you do that, That's why medical students, a lot of them divorce, But I'm glad I kept on doing. Try to help him, and I want to see him succeed.
So Mieko poured herself into writing her husband's quotes of encouragement, as well as her own original poetry, every day.
私はのぶちゃんが忠実にこの世での仕事を果たして天国に行けるなら
If you go to heaven, when you faithfully finish your appointed work on this earth, I shall not want anything. I am firmly determined to do whatever I can to do for you for this single purpose. You know what really touched my heart? If you have enough money, and if you are very wealthy, and you have a degree, it's easy to attract. But if you have no degree, you have no money, you have no resource, and yet there is someone telling you that even if you don't have a degree, I'm still with you. Even if you don't have any, any letters behind your name, that's fine, but I'm still with you. When I read this one, I shall not want anything, it broke my heart. What she is looking for is not, quote, degrees and wealth and monies and house and cars. I said, I knew something. There's something eternal, something valuable, something you cannot touch, but something very precious.
As a medical student, always hanging precariously in the balance between passing and failing, Yoshinobu took courage not only from his wife, but also from the Bible. One of his favorite verses was Exodus 14:13-14. Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. For Yoshinobu, who was used to doing 110% on anything he tried, being still was a challenge. He was put to the test one Friday evening while they were reading testimonies for the church from Ellen White together. They read how the Sabbath should be kept, and how Friday was a day given to prepare for the Sabbath, and ways in which they should do that.
When Mieko read this counsel, and when I read the counsel, I said, Mieko, we're not doing this, right? And she said, that's right. Next question is, why don't we put it into practice? And I said, well, because I have to study and I have to pass the test and then I have to do this. And I said, No, preparation is a preparation day. Sabbath is a Sabbath. So I say, all right, let's do it. Not knowing whether I pass a test or not. So we made a decision, we made a commitment and said, yes, preparation day, Friday is a preparation day. Sabbath is a Sabbath. And after Sabbath, then I have to study. So we made a commitment. And this is when something very significant happened. I was studying, just like everybody else, and then go out and take a test. It was a physiology test. I never forgot this instance. So I go to the class and take the test, and then I did better. But I don't know for the reason or how it happened, but the rest of the class did so poor for this particular physiology class. So in medical school, our grade is what we call scale score. Scale score. Your grade is based upon your peers' performance. It's called scale score. So if you did a little bit better, but the rest of the class, your peers, your classmates did so poor, what would happen to your scale score? Your scale score goes really high. So that helped my situation. It's good for me because you're almost at the bottom of the, you're going off the cliff. But at that moment, my scale score went this way. It's just like airplane. So instead of failure, and then it's okay, pass. And then you're about to fail, and yeah, you pass. And then the next course, and then pass. So physiology, and then pharmacology, and then pathology, and you go through the one class. And then finally made it to the medical school. When I had a rest on the Sabbath day, and then come back and then study, you know what happened to my productivity? It increased. When God gave that tranquility and also concentration power, those two things really helped me to go through the tough time. I believe it was God's invisible hand who touched Mieko's heart and touched my heart at the very moment that the message that I need to know. And then told us, yeah, Friday is the preparation day, Saturday is the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Don't worry about it. Because if you're busy and then if you want to study, you want to study even one more minute in order to pass a test. But it was a reverse logic. And then when I put into this principle into practice and be able to graduate medical school without, even though I was not the top of the class, I was at the bottom of the class, but I still made it through the program and graduate. Then I have to make a choice. Do I go to the cardiology or nephrologists or neurologists and gastroenterology? When I was when I was 12 years of age, I had a perforated appendix, and then I developed the infection. It's called the peritonitis, and I was very ill in Yonaguni Island. So my mother knew that I was very ill, and so she took me by boat from Yonaguni Island to the Ishigaki Island. And so in Ishigaki Island, it was such a blessing that mainland Japan sent a trained surgeon, general surgeon, to Ishigaki Island as an assignment. And then I was brought to the island by boat, by fishing boat. So I came, and then he looked at me and said, oh, this boy is really sick. So he performed the emergency appendectomy and then saved my life. So I remember that incident. So when I recovered from the appendectomy and went back to Yonaguni Island, and I still remember that incident. So it was very easy for me to choose, okay, I want to go into GI, gastroenterology, because of that childhood experience as a patient. It's getting harder and harder for me to keep on standing. But I'll be able to do all the required work in the chair. All the endoscopy is by hand, by finger. Yeah. Because as long as you're able to move your fingers to the right and left and up and down and be able to maneuver, you can do everything what you want to do.
Graduating from medical school was a surreal experience for Yoshinobu. He was now Dr. Namihira. and memories and emotions flooded his thoughts as he held that piece of paper. It felt very heavy to him when he realized what he had finally accomplished. Dr. Namihira took a residency in internal medicine at Loma Linda for 3 years and then traveled to the University of Mississippi Medical Center for his fellowship in gastroenterology.
And I was going back to California to become a teacher. And on my way, Dr. John Evans called and said, by the way, you're going back to California. And then Vicksburg is on the I-20, on the road. So don't you want to come and talk to me? And I said, oh, sure. That sounds good to me. So we came and stopped and talked to Dr. Evans. And then he asked me a few questions. And so, do you think you want to help me for the few months? I said, okay, few months? Said, sure, because I don't have any immediate plan. So, okay. So we stayed for 6 months. 6 months become 1 year, and 1 year become 2 years. 2 years becomes 25 years.
When the Namihiras moved to Mississippi, it wasn't just Yoshinobu and Mieko that came. They brought their 2 children with them, Aogu and Motoi. During this time, the Namihiras were very poor as they relied solely on Dr. Namihira's income from the university. They moved into a small, shabby house in South Jackson that had broken windows and no locks. They didn't even have enough money to heat the house during winter.
We turned off the heater, and then we put all the clothes, and the cold winter came, and all the human beings survived. But all the plants died in the house. So that was the situation. And then one day, my oldest brother came and said, Daddy? He said, oh, what's that? Daddy? And then he looked at straight in my eyes. Daddy, we have a 3-story house. And I said, 3-story? Because I feel so bad and small because I didn't have enough money to provide a big house. And my voice said, no, Daddy, we have a 3-story house. 3-story, I would think of it a big, gorgeous mansion. And say, well, the first floor is for the dog. So dog can stay there. And the second floor is for us, for you and for me and for Mami and for Motoi. So this is the second floor. And the third floor, which is the attic, that's for the rats and the mice and then also the bird. So when you look at the first floor for the dog, second floor for the human beings, and the third floor for the birds and the rats, and then he terms Namihira's 3-story house. But in reality, this is the house with the rent, no locks and no keys, and then the door was broken. You cannot even lock the door. But in the eyes of children, it was a 3-story house. But for me, as a provider, as a father and of the house, I feel so bad and say, you know what? I don't have enough money to even provide for the house, but yet beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
After Dr. Namihira accepted the partnership with Dr. Evans, they were able to move into a nicer house, and he could provide for his family financially in ways he hadn't been able to before. But Dr. Namihira never forgot his desire to use his skills to help others. He never refused to see or treat a patient if they couldn't pay.
It was a blessing that I was at the Okinawa Hospital for the handicapped children as a patient and go through the surgery and then the physical therapies and the training as a patient. The provider and then also patient is a 2 different worlds. They're not the same. My experience as a patient from the horizontal world is the very basis for me to be able to listen to the patient as a provider. I take care of the patients every day, and whether you have money, and I still take care of it. But if you don't have money, but I still take care of a patient. This is how it happened. I take care of the lady who came to me and because of stomachache. So I said, all right, I'll take care of it. And then it was, I performed the endoscopy and made a diagnosis of stomach ulcer, and I treat her condition, and she got well. So she was very happy. 5 years later, She got into trouble and then had a stomach ache and nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. She remembered, so she made an appointment, made a phone call and said, Dr. Namihira, can you help me? So yes, I will. So she came back, and then I took care of her, make diagnosis, endoscopy, and then treat her condition. So she got better. This is how it happened. She came for the first time, no money, no health insurance, cannot pay you. She came back, second time, 5 years later. She did not pay for your office visit and then, surgery fees, but she did something very unusual.
This lady went home and told her family. But not only her family, she told everyone she ran into. Her hairdresser, her bank tellers, friends and strangers alike. She couldn't help sharing with everyone what Dr. Namihira had done for her.
When she make a contact with the people in the public and so forth, when these people make a phone call, these are people have money, these are people with insurance, these are people with a resource, they are able to pay in cash. All of a sudden, one after another, patients make a phone call and make an appointment because of her unsolicited, voluntary advertisement. I was very impressed. 1 plus 1 equals 2, regular mathematics. Everybody understands. But 1 plus 0, you thought you got nothing. But 1 plus 0 equals 10. Why? Because you did not get nothing from her. But because of her activity, because of her way of saying thank you, thank you, thank you, many people around her become influenced and they came. So 1 plus 1 equals 2, that's regular mathematics. But 1 plus 0 equals 10, that's God's mathematics.
After one of Dr. Namihira's speaking appointments, he flew into Jackson, Mississippi on a very late flight. As he was struggling to carry his baggage while using his crutches, he heard a voice calling out his name. It was the son of a patient he had treated many years before.
Here comes, I have 2 bags, walking slowly so that I don't fall in airport. And then right behind you in airport, they'll come beside you and say, oh, Dr. Namihira, you look like a donkey. Let me help you. Carry the bag. Where did you park your car? Take your bags all the way to the parking lot and carry it. To me, it's a give and take principle. You never know where and how and who is going to be helped. Because you never know whom you help, but the very one you helped is the one who is going to help you back.
Dr. Namihira has made the give and take principle a central theme in his life. He and Mieko have spent their life together finding ways to give back through their family, time, energy, and resources.
There's 2 things you have to decide, whether you make money and then save it, or make money and spend it. So I chose the latter. Make money but also spend it. So now what I do is not only I run the business and I operate the clinic, but at the same time take the resource, the financial resource, and then use this resource for the public speaking and for the massive the book distribution that we do. So this is my way of saying or expressing, so let me return. Yeah. Because I was given something that I did not deserve, quote, as a life. Because I should be dead a long time ago. But now I still have a life, and then let me return something back. So that's the background. So Mieko and I make 2 weeks time off from my practice and go to mainland Japan and Okinawa, and then mainly contact with the public school, make a series of speaking engagement. High school, junior high school, the senior high school, the college, and the technical school, nursing schools. And then when they realize that I don't have any hidden agenda except for me to share, and then they realize the value, because it's a very heart-touching motivational talk. And then because of this background, public school principals are willing to give me a time slot.
Dr. Namihira shares his stories with students because he knows many of them don't get the encouragement they need to reach for their dreams. He believes if they can learn the valuable lessons that have shaped his life, they will understand the true meaning of success and how to achieve it.
Point number one is the spirit of perseverance. If you fail, you still stand up and pick up a courage and go. So even if you fail, failure is not a failure. Failure is a failure only when you quit. As long as you keep trying, failure is not in the vocabulary. Number two, willingness to share. It's okay for you to receive, but willingness to share, willingness to return. And number three, even if you gain the whole world, meaning you get wealth, you get resource, you get material, even if you gain the whole world, but lose your own soul, means your own spiritual life. Bible said, what profit that would it be? In other words, what will you give in exchange for your soul? That concept is very important, and it's a driving force for my life.
If anyone desire to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what is a man profited if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul?